So pain, yeah, that I saw that. Well, first of all, thank you for having me again. I think this was the first creative morning in Orlando, that the one I spoke at Urban Rethink. I don't know how many years ago. Feels like a lifetime ago. But yeah, I saw the theme pain. I said, oh. But then I said, okay, I'm not a specialist on pain, but I'm a human being. I experience pain, and my family's experienced pain of all kinds. And I certainly can speak as to my reactions to pain. And this is, I think, what we can hope to talk about today is how we react. Oh, thank you. To pain, because obviously that's where it ties into creativity. Because, hopefully, if you believe in a higher power, then you have to ask yourself, like, why is there pain at all, right? Well, obviously, same as everything else. If you don't have one, you're not going to have the other extreme or the opposite. And so I think we need pain, and pain's important. So let's first talk about emotional pain. So when I was growing up, my idol was Stephen Hawking, and I wanted to be a physicist, and that was my goal. And I was also, I suppose, an athlete. I did a lot of individual sports, mainly running and skiing, so cross-country running, cross-country skiing. So I'm aware of physical pain also. As you can see, I haven't changed. I was never big on muscle, so I experience pain in competition all the time. But here's the thing. My father trained with me. He's a healthy guy. We skied about 1,000 miles a week, and then he played 3 hockey games a week on top of that. So, pretty healthy guy. Died of a heart attack playing hockey at 37 years old, and I was 15. And so that was my first, big, encounter with big emotional pain. Is it okay if we get rid of that, or?
Please,
Yeah, let's see. It'll be a little bit quieter. Yeah, so what happened is that I essentially, changed my mind. And I said, okay, I tried to see myself, sitting at a desk thinking. And at that moment, I couldn't see myself doing that for long periods of time for the rest of my life. It's not going to happen. So I switched to music. And this happened to be 2 days before the deadline for me to apply for college. Okay, so the following year I was going to college, because our education system is a little different, and we get free college for a few years. And so, we're not going to get into that. That's a different kind of pain, which my kids haven't grown up here and gone to college here. I am very familiar with. So because the first college is free, so anyway, it's a long story. But the short story is that I said, okay, I'm going to go into music. My father was a fiddler. His mother was a well-known fiddler, who was on television and stuff. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go into music. Now, I had started music at 12 years old, as a participant. I wanted to play with my dad and his friends at the jam sessions. He never played for people; he just played for fun, And I listened for years. I sat on the staircase and I never said a word. I was very shy, believe it or not. I didn't speak at all. And then at 12 years old, I said, hey, I'd like to participate, And so I'm kind of half joking, but he took me by the earlobe, put me in the van, and we drove to town, because we lived in the woods and the mountains and north of Montreal. And he brought me to a jazz guitarist in town that he knew, who he knew could read music, and obviously. And my father didn't read music, and he said, you're going to learn to read music, because I don't want you to go through life like me, having to do everything by ear and by feel and that stuff. So, okay, I did that. It happened to be summertime. So for the summer, I had 3 theory lessons a week. And by the end of the summer, I had filled 3 workbooks, completely. My mom still has them. And I have not learned anything since. So as far as theory, music theory. So that guy except for orchestration, like he taught me everything. He prepared me for a musical life, like, and then of course I play at the time. So I started on drums, believe it or not, and then I didn't have time to do music in class during school, so I had to do it after school. So big band was the thing because that's the only thing that was happening after school. So I did that, but I couldn't play drums. There was already a great drummer in the big band. So, life is life. And she said, what do you need? And they said, well, I need somebody who can play tenor and clarinet and flute. I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I did that through high school. And but then, that fateful day when I had to choose what to do. So I put music, but then you put music, you apply for college, boom, and then you get literature back like a week and a half later, and it's like, oh, what instrument? Like you have to set up auditions, right? You have to decide if you're going to get in or not. And I said, I'm not going to play clarinet and tenor. I didn't choose that instrument because I loved it. I chose that instrument because they needed it, right? So I went through the band room. I tried every instrument, and the trumpet, I could not make a sound out of it. So I put trumpet down. And I signed, and then I had 6 weeks to learn to play trumpet before the audition. So this is an example of a reaction to pain that turned out like so. One could say that this was a stupid thing to do. It probably was. Also, like I had one professor who he would fail me every jury I had in junior college because he thought that I didn't play with the right embouchure, like I didn't have the right technique and stuff like that. And so, to a certain extent, he was correct. Like making a sound of the trumpet was always difficult for my entire career. The only difference is he never recorded anything. He never did anything but teach. And I recorded hundreds of albums, and I made a good living. I can afford to build and design and build this house out of my career, so I did pretty well. Even if I wasn't super talented on my instrument, on my main instrument at that time, I played trumpet. I just stopped playing trumpet like over a year ago. I retired from that because it took me 2 hours just to kind of keep in shape, and I didn't really have enough work to justify that kind of time commitment. But 44 years I played trumpet, and I enjoyed a great career. So having what could have been construed, and I think it could still be construed as a knee-jerk reaction to emotional pain, ended up to be a very, very good thing for me. Like it was a very healthy thing for me. First of all, like a lot of aspects of that, So the one is like from the isolated kid who grew up in the woods, my hobby was designing airplanes on paper. And sometimes building them out of wood, like, that throughout my childhood, I did that. I have hundreds of models. I also, spent my summers maintaining my ski trails in the woods. But also, I always had a 35 millimeter camera with me, and I took pictures all the time. Except that film was expensive, so there was no film in the camera. So that was my hobby, right? So taking pictures in my mind, but, framing the picture, that kind of stuff. You know what photography is. So I was a pretty isolated kid, one would say, And so the music, obviously, there was a few things that made me choose music. First of all, I was surrounded with music as a kid, so it was a familiar kind of thing for me. But the other thing is, music is a social activity. And so my brain probably told me, hey, you need something that's a little bit more social than being, stuck in an office thinking about how the universe works. And so that's a very smart thing. And it was completely unconscious at the time. And also so all of these aspects to the response to the emotional pain that you may or may not be aware of are important, and our brain, whether you're in a creative field or not, is going to find a creative way to get you out of that emotional pain. Whatever your trauma is going to be, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my family and my daughter and the pain that we experienced as a family because we lost our daughter earlier this year. And her. So let's talk a little bit about her and her reaction to emotional pain. So what do kids in a healthy, normal family life, what kind of emotional pain do they experience? Well, as a baby, she wanted a dog. She asked us for a dog, like every day, 10 times a day. No, you're not getting a dog. The answer was no. You're not going to change my mind, right? And so, and we didn't change our mind. Like, so her first reaction to that, let's call it an obstacle, but it's emotional pain, right? For a kid to be denied something that they want. Eventually, after, I don't know how many, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, she got a goldfish, then she got a hamster, or a guinea pig it was actually. Cookie, the guinea pig, still buried at the other house's backyard. But, fast forward when we moved here, several years, like we're talking 10 years later, maybe 12 years later, then we, she had gone through a lot of stages in her reaction to that pain. So first of all, she, as a kid, as a toddler, she threw tantrums, of course, and then she started to negotiate. So she would bargain, right? And then she did research. So eventually, when she finally was allowed to have a dog, she was preteen at that point. She had discovered, because we had concerts this whole time in our house, so getting a dog, one of the reasons, our reasons for saying no is like, well, we don't know who's allergic to dogs, and we have people like strangers in our home all the time. We don't want them to be uncomfortable because there's a dog in the house and they're allergic. So she found that, greyhounds are hypoallergenic and they don't have the, blah, blah, blah. So she did her research at a young age, like she was researching different breeds, which breed would be the best for our family, blah, blah, blah. When it came time to, all of that, and I'm going to fast forward, but eventually, like, she had a ranch, like an adoption ranch, bring in like 5 different dogs, whatever, several different dogs here. And then, I set up the drums, I played drums and trumpet, and like one of the dogs lost half of its hair in a minute. So that was not the dog for us. Like, he freaked out, right? Spock, we ended up adopting Spock. Spock was laid down, like he was looking outside for a little while, then he lay down and went to sleep while I was playing trumpet and drums and trying to make it to be as ugly and loud as possible. So that was the dog for us. Now, what did that reaction to pain, that exposure to that pain and that reaction to that pain, what did it bring it to her? Well, it turns out that she ended up being a veterinary surgeon. She ended up also getting grants for research in Africa for zoonotic diseases. It's a long story, but the main thing is, like, she was known by everybody who knew her that she would get the grant. If she applied for a grant, she'd get the grant. Because if you saw her in person, if she was allowed, so she was flown to, like, she was in Edinburgh. One of the big grantors was in London. She was flown to London for an in-person interview, like, the last 20 people, whatever, down from 20,000 applicants, and she got the grant, of course, because she was such a strong advocate for whatever she believed in because of her training, responding to our no, And so that, like, pain is not necessarily a good thing by itself, but how you learn to react to pain and what you do in reaction to pain can be a very, very, very helpful and valuable thing in your life. So I know that everyone here has experienced pain, emotional pain, and different kinds of pain, and I hope that you have found a way to respond to that pain that will help you and the universe, right? Because it's always what we hope is that, our experiences will be shared and help other people in the world and the universe. So that's emotional pain. And then there's other kinds of pain, obviously, what's all of the tumultuous and negative things that are happening in the world, that's a pain, right, that we feel, even though we're thousands of miles away and we're not directly affected by it. I think we are, but so one of the things we do here, for example, is every week on Wednesday night we have an art and wellness event, and a couple of days ago was meditation. It's free, right? And people come here and we do a social meditation or a shared meditation, and it helps. It makes a difference. It makes a difference for the people in the room, and I actually believe it makes a difference for the rest of the world also. If you want peace, you can wish for peace, or you can actually get together with other people and think about peace and get in a peaceful place yourself. Imagine you're walking down the street and you're late and bad things happen, you spilled your coffee on your shirt and all these things are happening, and you see somebody walking slowly and stopping in a window, and you can tell that person is mindful and at peace inside, and it's it will change you, and it will change you for the better. And that person didn't talk to you, but the energy that person radiated was helpful to you. And that, I believe that's the case for everybody, and that we can all be that person. So that's also a reaction to pain that is useful. And that's basically all I'm going to say throughout this thing. And even physical pain. So we've all experienced accidents and, disease and things that are painful. And in my case, I had an accident about 7 years ago, just a little over 7 years ago. I fell down on the pavement on my back and from a certain height, and I broke a lot of things. I broke 6 ribs, 2 vertebrae, my left ulna, my skull. I was bleeding from my ears, my nose, my mouth, my eyes. It was not pleasant. And I'm a trumpet player, so breathing with broken ribs is painful. And so I said, okay, I had 6 weeks left on my contract at La Nuba. And I decided there's no way in hell I'm going to finish my contract and not even go back to work. That's not going to happen. So I was back at work after 5 weeks. I played the show. It was painful. I yelled after every phrase, but hopefully the people in the audience didn't see that. I had a lot of friends come to my last show, and they said, "Yeah, he sounded fine. Everything was fine." It was not fine, but my what I got out of that is what I wasn't sure I could do it, but I could do it, and. We had a lot of injuries at this workplace, dangerous workplace, a circus, and we had some, I think 4 broken necks. They came back, but after 2.5 years, whatever. And a similar injury, any of these acrobats, it would have taken 2-3 years for them to come back. I came back after 5 weeks, and I was like, yeah, man. And I was because for me, that's one of the things that makes me get up in the morning is if I have pain, I'm gonna get through that pain. Maybe my daughter didn't fall too far from this tree, but I'm pretty stubborn, and I think that's a quality that can help you in your life. Hopefully, without annoying your spouse too much. That's a different story. You have to ask her for that, But yeah, so I was kind of proud, and the same thing, we had after 6,000 shows, I did this shows 8,500 times. After 6,000 shows, I had knee surgery, and the surgeon was late. So I had my surgery was late in the afternoon, so there's no way I could go back to work in time. So I missed a day of work. So as my first day, I missed my first show after 6,000 shows. And there was only one other guy in the whole company that had not missed a show yet. And he was a trampoline acrobat, so it was pretty remarkable that he didn't miss a show. And he didn't miss a show for another 1,000 shows after that, which is crazy. But, it was kind of a motivator for me to be, I was trying really hard to be that one guy who never missed a show, And so, working through pain is that, And I don't know about anything creative about that, except for me, it's finding the energy to go on kind of thing, So that's that. And then whatever other kind of pains there are, I don't think are going to be any worse than our emotional and physical pain, you know, and the pain of, you know, that other people, when you feel that other people are in pain. So, you know, that's it. I mean, we are who we are, and, you know, hopefully, you know, what I do helps the community. That's what I've wanted to do, you know, all this time, is try to be helpful. I just gave a talk on collaboration and the why, how, and all of these things, and collaboration is, you know, super important, and it's also for me, like at first when I moved, you know, from being this loner country, like forest guy, to urban social guy, that became an important aspect of, because I became a conductor really quickly. That's my specialty. That's what I do. And being a conductor is all about collaboration and social interaction and people management and all of that, which is all collaboration in my mind. Like, that's all of it is, like, you know, you can get an MBA, and in the end, if you're successful, it's because you can collaborate well and you can work well with others. You could also, like my father had a fourth grade education and went back to school later on to get his electrician, you know, card, you know. But essentially, you can. He was still an inventor, and he's still super smart, and he still was great at collaborating with other people, and he had success in his own way, you know. So yeah, I hope that was helpful to you. You have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Is that enough? I mean, I tried really hard not to be too long, because usually, like, I have to be cut off. So
we have time for some Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, comments, or just reactions, or whatever, to
you can come up here and talk. Yeah, I'm sure you'd be more interesting than me. Do you have any question about the place?
I have a lot of questions about the place. So my first question before we get to that, though, is that regarding pain and the creative process, do you have like a specific example of how you took a painful moment and what it led to, like the creativity, whether it's the...
Okay, so like a very direct and recent example is that, like, you know, after my daughter passed away, I eventually, like, soon after, I decided to write a concert, to compose a concert in her honor. She played several instruments at a very high level, even though she wasn't a professional musician at the end of her life. I took tunes that she liked to play as a kid on, like, piano, horn, and viola, and so you can hear that, and then I try to compose some things. Some of it is a little bit verbatim, like she ended up playing in the National Youth Orchestra. She actually made it on 2 instruments, which is the only person ever to do that. She had to choose. So she chose the viola because Joshua Bell was the soloist and Valery Gergiev was the conductor. If you know anything about classical music, you'll say, oh my God. Yeah, so she went on tour in Russia and UK and all that stuff with this group. And so they played the Shostakovich 10th Symphony in there. So the tense, like, there's one movement of tense. It's pretty much verbatim because, you know, I'm not going to change that much, and I just wanted to kind of. But what I did is I called this movement "Citizen of the World," and I like, there's Easter eggs, national anthems of every country she worked with. So, you know, the UK, Scotland, it's not an official anthem because it's not officially a country. But I put a couple in there, and then you know, Kenya and Malawi, Uganda and Thailand, and all of these countries where she worked. I put here, of course, the U.S. and Canada. So I put and in Quebec. So we have our own unofficial national anthem, even though we're not officially a country. So I put that in that. So, but the idea is that, you know, I tried to get out, and you know, I didn't succeed in every way. Like, she sang very well. She could sing country like nobody's business, you know, and classical and whatever. Like, she's a talented kid. But she wrote as a kid. But the thing is, like, her portfolios, like, if you read her portfolio at 12 years old, like, some of her poems and writings once you know the rest of her story, it's become like she almost foresaw what was going to happen. She was in a lot of pain herself, like so, and I could talk to that because it's important. But so she had scoliosis. She had a growth spurt, you know. She had scoliosis, like bad scoliosis. She was very, very much in pain with her back. And then as soon as that subsided, her hips, like it was like growth spurts, and they were misaligned. So she had, like, her first year of college, she had to have surgery on both her hips, like right in August, I think, was the first one, and the holiday break was the other one. So, you know, she learned to deal with pain in her way, and that's also kind of forged her willpower, I want to say, or the strength of her will. And but yeah, I tried to write songs using her writings. I couldn't. And then also I was imagining, because you know the concert is January 27th in the afternoon. It's going to be sold out. It's selling very well right now, so hurry up if you want tickets. But it's the instruments are being played by her teachers. So it's because I was trying to make that as personal and relevant as possible and powerful, I guess. But her only voice teacher was her mom. So her mom's already going to play piano because she was a piano teacher. So, and I was trying to imagining Hélène trying to sing words from Camille, no matter what I wrote as melodies, like, and I couldn't do it, and I couldn't write it. So I was unable to compose songs using her writing. So I didn't succeed in every way, like I failed in that way. For now, I may get back to that, and maybe I'll be able to do that later when, you know, the pain is not so maybe fresh or strong, you know. But yeah, so that's definitely a reaction to that. The other thing, for example, when I had my accident, so physical pain, I'm a trumpet player, and I had, you know, they give you, because they had to deflate I lost also, I forgot, they took out like a third of my right lung. So, you know, I'm a trumpet player, so having 1.5 lungs is not ideal, you know. So they give you these apparatus, you know, to work on your breathing, but it's mainly inhaling, and my job is about exhaling. So I said, you know, get me my cornet. So I have like a 19th century cornet, and the day after surgery, I was already trying to practice in the hospital. It was ugly, but what it did is, like, this whole process of, like, I had to relearn how to play, because I couldn't play for a few days, you know, because I didn't have the surgery right away, because it was the weekend. I got injured on a Friday afternoon, so I got the surgery the Monday morning, because you want the best surgeon, and the weekend surgeons may or may not be the best surgeons. So eventually, like, the head of trauma operated on me, so I was golden, you know. But in any case, so I have to relearn how to play, and that process made me a better teacher, even though I never really taught trumpet privately. I taught at McGill for 10 years, but it was all ensembles. I was a conductor, so. But, you know, I ended up having private students, and I was a better teacher because I had to relearn how to play. And already my process was such that I was already destined to be I could have been a great trumpet teacher just because I learned so late. There's nothing natural about what I did, right? So I'm pretty aware of how I did it because it's not natural. Like, I know some incredible players who are not great teachers because for them, playing comes easy. So if it comes easy, they never really thought about how they do it, right? And so how can you explain it if you didn't think about it? It's hard. So for me, I had to think about it a lot, you know. And my trumpet teacher was very, very smart. He didn't teach me the same way he taught my best friend was a natural player, and he never had him play in lessons. He kept talking to him, like he would play for half a minute, and then they would talk for 5 minutes. He never talked to me because he knew I had the analytical mind anyways. So I played non-stop in my lessons, like, you know, and then all he would say is, yeah, good, next, you know. That's all he did. And that was the best thing he could do because, you know, let's show you the material, let's get through books, and I get through stuff, and then I played everything that I had to play, and that's it, you know. I was thinking enough on my own. I didn't need his help to think more. I needed his help to think less. So, you know, I don't know if that answers your question. But.
So it seems like you have a pretty driving personality in getting up and moving through things and moving through pain. But as far as pain connected with grief and loss and sitting in pain sometimes is the way through that. So how do you process through grief?
I'm no better than anyone else. I don't know any more than you do. You probably know more than me. I don't know if I'm doing it the right way or not. And perhaps that is the universal thing about this, is that we don't know. And what works for you probably doesn't work for me. And we're all unique people. That's what makes us interesting. And I don't know. I don't have any answers. I have a lot of questions, but I don't have any answers. I can only tell you what I do, and I try to create, and I try to help the community. Every time I get, like you saw the slideshow, like, and the little plaque, it's stupid, but it's one of my ways. We still find pictures that I didn't have, and I take care of that little slideshow. There's like almost 1,000 pictures on there now, so I'll find more eventually, and that's it. It's as time passes, it's interesting. My reaction changes to those pictures. I see those every day when I go back like 50 times a day, and it helps, but it helps in different ways. Like sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's not hard, and sometimes it makes me smile, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I don't know. I get up in the morning and I try to do something good and help someone, or what we do here is connecting the audience with the performers in a different way than other places, and that is a different kind of collaboration. From my spot, from my viewpoint, and from the viewpoint when you're sitting down, and from the viewpoint here. So we try to, for example, the acoustic system is there for the enjoyment of the audience, but it's there really for the performance itself, so for the performers, because I'm able to create the ideal acoustic environment for whatever is happening on stage, and so it's priceless. I have a couple of sopranos from New York City. They fly down here, they record one song, and they go back, because they tell me it cost them like $15,000 to get that 20 minutes in a great room with a recording engineer in New York City, and they get the same, like they get the Arsenal, like whatever it's called, that room. Is literally $15,000 an hour, and they get that for $120 here. So why not come here to do that? So so that's why that helps me get up in the morning and do what I do, because 75 hours a week is nothing compared to the enjoyment I get out of it, and the smile I see on my wife's face when everybody's happy.
You mentioned early on you had a passion, or you want to be a physicist.
Yeah.
Did you find that later on there was a connection with what you're currently doing to that passion?
Well, I mean, Newtonian physics for sure. Yeah. I mean, music and visual, audiovisual is all about Newtonian physics. Now, my son is a much better physicist than I am, so maybe when I die, I can say I did both, like our progenitor, how do you say that? Like our offsprings, can complete what we started sometimes, or maybe can do what we didn't start, whatever. But I do it a different way, I designed this place, I designed a boat, I designed a different place. Like my next venue, if I was to build one, would be much better than this one. And I have a couple patents and stuff, I did physics in a different way, in a more applied way. That's okay. I don't quite understand the multiverse and quantum physics as well as I could have if I had studied it, but it's okay. I can enjoy the universe anyways, a different way.
I was going to ask, you said you did thousands of shows for Lanuba, and I'm sorry I never got to see it, but as a musician coming in every day and playing a show or multiple shows, like how do you kind of keep that fresh and keep?
Yeah, so there's many ways I did that. That's interesting. That was the pain of repetition. So the first thing I did, first of all, is I chose my musicians. I didn't go through that was a condition when they called me. I said, yeah, I'm not going through casting. I'm getting my own musicians. I'm uprooting my family. I'm going to a different country, 2,000 miles away. I'm not going there with people I don't know. I'm going there with people I know are going to get along, and I'm going to get musically and personally, and maybe not always personally, but at least musically, and I can manage the rest, you know. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I arranged the music. So I didn't compose the music. I would be a lot richer if I had. But I arranged the music, and I made sure everybody had space to be, or time in that case, to be creative and to play, like, you know, solos, like play whatever you want there. And the other thing is, so in 19 years that I, 18, 19 years that I did that show, 8,500 times, we had 2 days with a full cast. So I had 4 shows in August 1999 where the show was kind of like what it was supposed to be. Every other show was different. So that's one thing. The other thing is that's exactly why we started the concerts at the house in September 2000, is because we used to be off on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we couldn't find any good music back then anywhere. We found one time at a lesbian bar up in Winter Park that doesn't exist anymore. Great show, but like after months of searching, I said, that's ridiculous. Let's do our own. Let's make our own concert. And we made, you know, I did that first concert, and then it was just to be a one-off, you know. I arranged the Goldberg variations, Bach's Goldberg variations for the band at Cirque, and that was it. And then somebody said, hey, when's the next one? Oh. And then that's it. There was no plan. It's just happened. Now there's a plan, but but it started pretty organically, you know. So it's still, I guess, a very organic thing, but it's a little bit more organized now. Organized organics. Isn't that what we are? You know? If you look at my bedroom, you would say, okay, a disorganized organic, but or my office actually.
So, kind of like piggybacking or springboarding off of that, you started organically, and it was like, when's the next one? But how or why did you decide to build a space in your house as opposed to finding something else?
Yeah, very practical reason actually is, well, that's a different question. I'll answer both the questions I read in that one question. So we had a Brazilian night, which Brazilian music is very dear to my heart, because that's why I came here in the first place, because I did a big band. I had a big band series where I would arrange everything, but I said, okay, we're going to do a Brazilian. So my Brazilian friends whom I had played with, I said, okay, we're going to arrange your tunes. So I had 25 people on stage. It was a long story, but the scout was there, and that's how I came here. So I said, oh, let's have a Brazilian night. That was like maybe, I think it was January 2004, maybe. Let's call it that. And they came. And so we had like 100 people in our house that accommodated 25, you know. So we found wine glasses on the other side of the lake the next day when we were walking with the kids. And so it's like, okay, we got to do something about that. So it was totally, the need was there. And then there was no, the thought didn't cross my mind to open like a commercial space. Like, it didn't cross my mind. I said, no, what we do is concert in our living room, so we're just going to design a bigger house with a better living room. That, you know, this is not even my design, really. I mean, it's my design, but my original design was bigger and stuff. But then when I met with the architect told us the price of the build. I was like, holy crap. So we changed it overnight completely. So this is like a quickie job, you know, but it does the trick for most part, you know. You know, the important thing for us is we have like more than 50% or more of our events are pay what you want, which means that doesn't matter what your economic situation is, you can come and enjoy some art and music and theater and poetry. And the other thing is, like, the fact that it's part of a house is just what we wanted to do, and I'm lucky enough that my wife said yes. You know, I said, like, what do we do? Do we stop or slow down? Because, you know, the traffic, like the parking situation, and like in a normal neighborhood, like, it was like the neighbors are not gonna go for that, like, for if you do that too many times. So we had an option, and we could stop or we could grow. And she said, oh yeah, we were 2 months away from paying down the house, the other house, remortgaged it, bought this land, like, you know, we told the kids, like, you're not going we're not going to help you with college, so get good grades because your college fund just went into this house, you know. And so that's that. Like, who knows if we can ever retire, but so far so good. We'll see. We'll find out. But the thing is, like, my son's Charles, the oldest, does the tech, so he's fully trained. He could just, like, if I go tomorrow, he can totally take over for me. And Jean-Marie, who just went out because he's playing at Shakespeare right now, cello, he does the public-facing stuff. So he's very, very good at that. So he's our house manager, is part-time. But, you know, he could take over the artistic side of it. In other words, because I'm the artistic director now and the technical director, so I do basically 2 jobs. And finally, we have a new executive director, so I don't have to do 3 jobs. For the past 8 months, I've been doing 3 jobs. But yeah, so each kid can take over for me. So if something happens, we're like, the succession is good. Like the succession plan is in place. So whether they decide to do it long term or not, I don't know. But at least it can carry over until we find a solution. Yeah.
What's your greatest hope, painful or otherwise, that the Timucua Foundation and this wonderful house becomes?
Well, my dream, if I had the funds, it would be to build my new design. Either retrofit buildings, but or build new ones. But what was, so if we want to help the audience gain access to great art and music, we also have to help performers play. And because the music industry, let's talk about music, has changed a lot. It's completely transformed from the 70s to now. Record companies no longer pay for tours. There's no longer record companies, essentially. And so, as really, and so, what happens is that either if you have a band, if you have a group, if you have, like, let's call it a product, but I don't want to be business-like, but if you have something that you're trying to do, a project, you have 2 choices. Either you hire a manager and you give them all your money, and so you're gonna do a tour, but you know you're not gonna make any money. Or you do everything yourself, which means that you're spending 2-3 hours a day booking hotels, booking rooms, like trying to route your tour, all that stuff, and you're not writing music and practicing the way you're supposed to. And so my dream is to build these things, like from DC to here to New Orleans, so that bands and groups and projects can tour again easily, because you get the gig, you work for a month, you know. So that would be the dream, because, so in other words, franchising, you know, it would be the model, because then we like, imagine the musicians that we bring here, often they're on tour. The tours now, they're like sometimes 3 days, you know, they're like nothing. So we get these musicians from Brooklyn or from Japan, or usually those are not going to be 3 days, but, you know, wherever they're from, they're touring. It's a temporary thing. It's a short-term thing. And so they have a chance to play their thing a few times, and then they go back home, and then they're getting back into their routine to try and make money. Usually they teach in a college, blah, blah, blah. You know, they find a way to make money. So it can be with their art as well. That's fine. But not the same. It usually doesn't take the same form as it does when they're touring. So imagine how good the music would be if the music is already pretty good and they're temporary tours. If they were longer, or if they had more chance to play, how much better they would be. How much better art you would get as an audience. And then at the same time, if you don't live in Orlando, you don't have access to a place like this, because it's the only place like this anywhere. And so imagine that there's a place like this everywhere. Then all of these audiences would have access to the same conditions, the same great art, the same great instruments and everything. Like, you know, part of what we offer performers is, like, there's a world famous double bass in that lobby back there, and drum set and good amps and all that stuff. And that's very helpful when you're touring, because you don't have to move all these big things, right? You know, when they come here, before they come here the first time, sometimes they don't trust the bass, the house bass, house bass. Until I tell them, oh, you know, that's the bass that Doug Matthews plays with Sam Rivers for 25 years all over the world. Oh, I played that bass, or I've seen that bass, I know that bass, I trust that bass now, or I have some kind of level of trust. And so they come here a little bit less stressed. That means they're going to play better. Then we give them the right acoustic conditions. They're going to play better. We give them an audience that listens, and that, you know, even though there's wine involved, you know, it's not a bar. It's not in this. The music is not in the service of the hospitality industry or whatever, food and beverage industry. So, meaning, like, they feel the connection with the audience is better. It's just a better connection. They play better. So we do everything we can to make them play better, you know? And because then you benefit. And then I benefit, because when I edit the video the next day, it's a better video. It's if I mix the audio, it's better. So I'd rather listen to good music than bad music, you know, myself. So, you know, that's that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Would you want to offer residencies?
Yeah. So what the idea would be that, so here, my family still lives here, and, you know, I'm not ready yet to have people in my daughter's room necessarily right now, but it will happen. But yes, the new venues, they have enough space for 32 musicians, two to a bed, so 16 beds. It's pretty good, like, you know, with a full kitchen and everything, like, you know, they would stay there. So, because that's a big thing. Like, in other words, if the Timucua tour takes shape and exists, you know, and is born, then you know that all you need is transportation. Everything else is taken care of with one, let's call it a phone call, but like one application. You know, you apply once, boom, it's done. It's all done. And the thing is, I didn't invent this. It's been like this for decades in Europe. I used to tour in the 80s and 90s in France and Germany, and that's how it is. Like in France, there's these salles polyvalentes, these versatile rooms, all in, like, every small town. Of course, there's less big cities and more like smaller towns everywhere in Europe. But so it's maybe more conducive to that kind of thing. But if you can imagine suburbs or, like, you know, towns as... That's a good thing to do. And so the way it works in France is there's 3 tours of these, and they skip 2 towns. So you do 1 tour, you're good for a month. If you take all 3 tours in a row, you're going to go 3 times around France, and you're going to hit every town. But if you do only 1, you're going to hit every 3rd town. You know? So, but you never drive more than an hour and a half at the most, you know? An hour a day you drive, you get to the place. You don't have to worry about lodging. It's all taken care of. The food is taken care of. It's awesome. And then you get to, you know, taste the regional food everywhere. It's like, it's awesome. It's an awesome tour. And so that's what I want here for the US. Like, why don't we have that here? Like, we deserve it as much as they do. Right? So that's my dream. So if you have, like, just a few $1 million, it's not, we don't need a lot, because as soon as we start, it's gonna mushroom, you know. It's gonna go really, really quick. So that's all I need is a couple $1 million to start, and then I'm good.
All right, any final questions? We have time for one last question. If we have. I think we'll end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.